Alina tore open a ration pack, the grey paste tasting of ash and chemicals, and forced it down, knowing strength was all that kept her alive. Her lasgun's power pack was at 3/4 charge, enough for a fight if she aimed true. She glanced at Eerie, whose hand shook as he fixed his bayonet, his lips moving in silent prayer. "Stay sharp, lad," she said, softer now, though the lie in her words stung. The Vox crackled, its signal faint and distorted. Captain Petra Volkov's voice cutting through. "All units, stand to. Movement reported in Sector 6. Prepare for contact." A murmur rippled through the trench. Guardsmen hauling themselves up with weary resignation, their lasguns raised, their faces set in grim determination. The ground trembled beneath Alina's boots, a low, alien hum vibrating through the ice, sending a jolt of pain through her wounded hip. The air grew thick with a chittering that wasn't the wind, a sound that set her teeth on edge and made her scar throb with a pulse of fear. She checked her lasgun again, its weight a cold comfort, and slung it over her shoulder. The blizzard parted for a moment, revealing shadows in the green haze, claws glinting, eyes like oil, a hunger no prayer could banish. Alina's heart pounded, her breath fogging in the cold, and she wondered if the Emperor had turned his gaze from Glassem, leaving them to face the shadow alone. As the chittering grew into a roar, she gripped her Aquila pendant, its edges worn from desperate prayers, and steeled herself for the fight she knew was coming. The trench line glittered with frost, its flak-board walls trembling as the hum intensified, a sound that wasn't just sound but a presence, a hunger that pressed on the soul. Alina's squad braced, their lasguns raised, their eyes scanning the haze for the enemy they could feel but not see. The wounded groaned, their prayers faint, their lives a flickering flame in Glatim's cold. Talia checked her medicais kit, her hand steady despite the fear in her eyes. Mikhail rigged a frag trap, his silence a shield against the unknown. Lena adjusted her scope, her breath slow and controlled, her focus a blade. Ivan stood like a rock, his maul ready, his growl a challenge to the shadows. Yuri's prayers grew louder, his voice cracking, his lasgun trembling but raised. Alina felt the miasma's weight, a despair that whispered of surrender, a promise of peace if she only knelt. She shook it off, her scar burning, her pendant a cold anchor. The Vox crackled again, Volkov's voice urgent. "Sector 6, movement confirmed, stand ready." The guardsmen tightened their grips, their faces pale, their faith a fragile thread. Alina glanced at Ivan, his eyes meeting hers, a silent vow. We hold or we die. The chittering swelled, a tide of hunger that drowned the blizzard's howl, and Alina braced, her lasgun steady, her heart a spark in the dark. The shadows moved closer, their claws a promise of death, and she knew the Emperor's light was their only shield, if it still shone on Glatum at all. The trenches of Glassem were a frozen scar, their walls slick with ice, the air heavy with frost, and a creeping despair that clung like damp rot. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood rigid, her lasgun gripped tight, its cold steel a frail anchor against the dread coiling in her gut. The Vox's order to prepare for contact hung over the Valhallan 3/12 like a noose, each guardsman bracing for an enemy cloaked in the blizzard's green-tinged haze. The chittering hum grew louder, vibrating through the permafrost, a sound that clawed at faith and set teeth on edge. The miasma thickened, its green veil stinging Alina's eyes, whispering surrender in her mind, promising an end to pain if she only dropped her lasgun and knelt. Her squad huddled in the trench's gloom, their breath fogging in the flickering lumen light, their faces pale and drawn. Private Yuri Vostok clutched his lasgun, his lips moving in frantic prayers, his eyes darting to the trench's lip as if expecting claws to erupt from the snow. Sergeant Ivan Drakov checked his power maul's energy cell, his growl a low rumble, his bearded face set in stoic resolve. Talia, the medici, bandaged a guardsman's frostbitten hand, her hand steady despite the cold. Mikhail, the sapper, rigged a frag trap along the trench's edge, his silence a focused shield. Lena, the sharpshooter, peered through her lasgun scope, her eyes narrowed against the haze. There were 6 now, the ghosts of Oleg and Katya lingering in the shadows. Their deaths a weight that pressed on Alina's chest like a grav plate. The air grew taut, heavy with an authority that snapped the guardsman to attention. Boots crunched through the icy mire, and a shadow loomed. Commissar Gregor Malin, a spectre of the Emperor's wrath. His black greatcoat was pristine despite the snow, his peaked cap casting a shadow over a face carved from stone, his augmetic eye whirring with a red glow that pierced the gloom. A bolt pistol hung at his hip, its grip polished by countless executions, and the aquila on his chest gleamed like a blade. Marlin was a name whispered in fear, a man who had purged entire squads for a moment's hesitation, his zeal a fire that burned without warmth. Valhallans of the 312th. Marlin's voice was a lash, cutting through the chittering hum that haunted the air. He stood atop a flagboard crate, his hands clasped behind his back, his augmetic eye scanning the line. The Emperor's light shines upon you, even in this forsaken place. The xenos' filth gathers beyond our trenches, their plague an affront to the Golden Throne. You will hold this line, you will drive them back, and you will prove your worth, or you will die in shame, your souls cast into the void. His words were polished, each syllable a blade to spur obedience, but Alina heard the truth beneath. They were expendable, their lives a currency to be spent against an enemy no man could name. Alina's stomach twisted, Marlin's rhetoric a fire that burned cold. The 312th was a shadow of its strength, their lasguns no match for the shadows in the haze. Sector 6, where the Vox reported movement, was a death trap, a tundra of craters and wire where no man returned. Malin's command was not a call to victory, but a sentence to slaughter. She glanced at Sergeant Ivan, hoping for a flicker of defiance, but his eyes were fixed on Malin, his jaw set with resignation. Yuri's hand shook so badly his lasgun rattled against the trench wall, his prayers now a frantic whisper. Lena's scope didn't waver, her focus a shield against the Commissar's fervor. Talia's hands paused, her medici work stilled by Marlin's presence. Mikhail continued rigging his trap, his silence a wall against the Commissar's zeal. Alina wanted to speak, to protest that they were too few, too broken, but Marlin's bolt pistol was a spectre that silenced her. She had seen men shot for less, their brains splattered across the ice for daring to question. Marlin's gaze swept the line, settling on Private Dmitri, a wiry conscript at the trench's end, whose hands trembled as he tried to salute. "Trooper Dmitri," Malin said, his voice a blade of ice. "Do you doubt the Emperor's will? Do you fear the xenos more than his judgment?" Dmitri stammered, his voice cracking. No, my lord. I serve the Emperor, always." Malin's bolt pistol was drawn in a blur, its muzzle pressed against Dmitri's forehead. The shot was deafening, a crack that echoed through the trench. Dmitri's head exploding in a spray of blood and bone that froze in the cold. His body crumpled into the icy sludge, a warning writ in crimson. The guardsmen flinched, some muttering prayers, but none dared move. Malin holstered his weapon with deliberate calm, his augmetic eye whirring. Cowardice is heresy. Doubt is heresy. You will march to Sector 6 at 2:04 hours. You will face the xenos, or you will face me. Alina's hands tightened on her laser gun, her knuckles white, her scar throbbing with the pulse of her fear. Dmitri had been green, untested, but his death was a blade held to every throat. The Commissar's zeal left no room for survival, only obedience. She thought of Oleg, torn apart in the snow, of Katya choking on black phlegm, of the endless silence that had swallowed Glesem's outposts. She had fought for Valhalla since her youth, had bled on a dozen worlds, and for what? To die in a trench, under a miasma-choked sky, for a cause that felt as distant as terror. Ivan leaned close, his voice a harsh whisper. "Keep your eyes forward, Alina. We follow orders or we're next. No sense dying for a moment's weakness." "Since when has dying for nothing been off the table?" Alina muttered, her voice bitter, the words swallowed by the blizzard's howl. She thought of her squad's ghosts, each one a mark on her soul, and wondered if the Emperor's light had ever touched Glasem. As the first tremors of movement shook the trench, and the chittering grew into a roar that drowned the wind, Alina felt the weight of Malin's command settle like frost in her lungs, choking what little hope remained. She gripped her laser gun tighter, her scar burning, and prepared to march into the haze where the xenos waited, their hunger a shadow that no prayer could banish. The trench was a prison of ice and fear, its walls trembling as the hum intensified, a psychic weight that pressed on Alina's mind. She glanced at Eerie, his face pale, his prayers a desperate chant, and felt a pang of guilt for her sharp words. Talia's hands resumed their work, binding a wound, her focus a defiance of despair. Mikhail's trap was set, its wire glinting, a frail hope against the unseen. Lena's scope swept the haze, her silence a blade. Ivan stood ready, his maul a beacon, his eyes on the horizon. The guardsmen braced, their laser guns raised, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. The miasma whispered, urging surrender. But Alina's scar burned, her pendant a cold anchor, her Valhallan blood a spark of defiance. The chittering swelled, a tide of hunger, and Alina knew the Emperor's light was their only shield, if it still shone. Dawn on Glasem was a lie, a sickly grey smear across a blizzard-choked sky, its light swallowed by clouds that pulsed with an unnatural green miasma. The trenches of the Valhallan 312th were a quagmire of despair, their ice walls trembling with a low hum that vibrated through the permafrost. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood at the trench's edge, her laser gun heavy in her hands, its power pack warm against her chest, its barrel cold as the grave. Her breath fogged in the sub-zero air, her scar itching under the weight of fear that pressed on her heart. Commissar Malin's order to advance on Sector 6 echoed in her mind, a death knell that drove the guardsmen forward despite the terror that gnawed at their souls. The Vox crackled with Captain Petra Volkov's voice, strained and urgent. "All units advance, Sector 6, contact imminent." The words were a lash, spurring the 312th over the trench's lip and into the frozen wasteland beyond. Malin stood like a statue of black iron, his bolt pistol drawn, his augmetic eye glowing as he barked, "Forward for the Emperor's glory. No retreat, no surrender." The guardsmen obeyed, their boots sinking into the snow, their laser guns raised in a ragged line that trembled with exhaustion and dread. The blizzard howled, the green miasma thickening, its acrid sting burning Alina's eyes, its whisper urging her to kneel. Sector 6 was a hellscape of craters and jagged ice. The ground scarred by abandoned agri-rigs, their steel frames twisted into skeletal husks by some unseen force. Razor wire coiled in lethal tangles, its barbs slick with a viscous ichor that steamed in the cold. The air was thick with a choking haze, the stench of ozone and decay so potent it stung Alina's throat. Corpses littered the field. Farmers, militia, their bodies blistered and blackened, their faces frozen in screams, their eyes hollow with the plague's touch. The horizon pulsed, a black tide moving with a purpose no man could fathom, its rhythm unnatural, alien. Alina led her squad at a crouching run, her lasgun sweeping the shadows, her heart pounding against her ribs. Sergeant Ivan was at her side, his power maul humming, its blue glow a faint beacon in the gloom. Private Yuri stumbled behind, his lasgun shaking, his prayers a frantic murmur lost in the hum. Talia, the medici, kept pace, her kit slung over her shoulder, her face pale but resolute. Mikhail, the sapper, moved with quiet precision, his traps ready. Lena, the sharpshooter, scanned the haze, her scope glinting. They were 6 against an unknown enemy, their squad's ghosts, Oleg and Katya, trailing them like a curse. The first attack came without warning, a chittering roar that erupted from the snow. The ice split, claws bursting upward, and termagants, xenos horrors of chitin and fang, swarmed the line. Their bodies were grotesque, all sharp edges and writhing limbs, their eyes glinting like oil in the dim light. Flesh borers spat beetles that burrowed into flesh, their screams a sound no man could forget. "Fire!" Alina shouted, her lasgun barking crimson bolts that burned into the swarm. Each hit a burst of green ichor that sizzled on the ice. The Valhallans fought with desperate precision, las fire cutting through the termagants. But the xenos were endless, their numbers a tide that swallowed men whole. Alina saw Private Koval, a conscript from another squad, scream as a claw tore through his chest, his blood steaming in the cold. Another guardsman fell, beetles eating his face, his lasgun firing wildly into the sky. The air grew colder, a psychic weight pressing on Alina's mind, a silence that wasn't silence but a hunger that whispered of death. "Hold the line," Ivan roared, his power maul crushing a termagant in a spray of ichor, his bearded face splattered with green filth. He fought like a machine, his Valhallan discipline unyielding, but even he faltered as a Hormagaunt leapt from the haze, its scythe arm slashing his thigh, blood soaking his greatcoat. He grunted, stumbling, his maul still swinging as he drove the beast back. Alina fired, her lasgun's power pack heating, each shot a prayer to the Emperor that went unanswered. Lena's shots were precise, dropping bioforms with a sniper's calm, but a termagant lunged, its claws grazing her arm, ichor burning her flesh. She hissed, firing point blank, the beast collapsing, but her arm trembled, the plague's touch already blackening her veins. Yuri wasn't so lucky. A termagant surged, its claws pinning him to the ice, its maw snapping inches from his face. "Alina!" he screamed, his voice a raw plea as he clawed at the beast, his lasgun lost in the snow. Alina turned, firing a burst that burned through the xenos, its ichor steaming, but it was too late. Yuri's chest was a ruin, his blood freezing in the cold, his eyes wide with a terror that lingered in death. Alina froze, her mind reeling, Yuri's scream echoing in her skull like a vox loop. "Move," Ivan barked, dragging her behind a shattered rig, Talia and Mikhail following, Lena limping with her wounded arm. The swarm surged, a chittering wave that drowned the regiment's cries. The Valhallans were falling, their last fire a feeble spark against the xenos' numbers, their prayers lost in the hum that shook the ice. Malin stood amidst the chaos, his bolt pistol roaring, each shot a thunderclap that felled a xenos. For the Emperor, he bellowed, his greatcoat splattered with ichor, his augmetic eye glowing. But even he could not stem the tide, the swarm closing around the 312th like a noose. Alina sank to her knees behind the rig, her chest heaving, her hands slick with frost and blood. Ivan and Talia crouched beside her, their faces pale, their breaths ragged. Mikhail rigged a trap at the rig's edge, his silence strained. Lena leaned against the steel, her arm blackening, her scope still raised. They had survived the first wave, but the cost was a wound that bled their hope dry, and the xenos were still coming, their chittering a hymn of hunger that drowned the blizzard's howl. Alina gripped her lasgun, her scar burning, and wondered if the Emperor's light could pierce the miasma, or if Glakum was already lost to the shadow. The rig's steel was cold, its surface pitted by ichor, a frail shield against the swarm's hunger. Alina's squad was a flicker of defiance, their lasguns low, their wounds bleeding, their souls battered by the miasma's weight. The air grew colder, the hum a psychic blade that cut at Alina's resolve, whispering of surrender, of unity with the Xenos' hive. She thought of Yuri's scream, Oleg's torn limbs, Katya's choked breath, and felt their ghosts, a burden that crushed her. The Vox was silent, Volkov's voice gone, Marlin's fate unknown. The domes loomed, their plasteel a distant hope, but the haze pulsed with claws, and Alina knew the fight was far from over. She checked her lasgun, its power pack at half charge, and steeled herself, her pendant a cold anchor, her scar a warning. The chittering grew, a tide approaching, and Alina braced, her heart ice, her lasgun steady, ready for the Emperor's test, or the Xenos' feast. The icy plains of Glasim were a graveyard, their snow stained with ichor and blood, the green miasma a choking veil that smothered hope. Corporal Alina Korsakov crouched behind a shattered agri-rig, her lasgun trembling in her hands, its power pack nearly spent from the desperate fight against the Tyrannid swarm. The first wave had retreated, leaving the Valhallan 312th a broken remnant, their trenches overrun, Private Yuri's bloodied body frozen in the snow. Sergeant Ivan, Talia, Mikhail, and a wounded Lena remained, their faces pale in the dim light, their breaths ragged with the weight of survival. The agridomes of Glakem loomed in the distance, their plasteel shells cracked and wreathed in the miasma, their gothic silhouettes marred by a haze that pulsed with alien life. The Vox was silent, the regiment's chain of command shattered, and Commissar Marlin was missing. Last seen firing into the swarm, his fate a mystery. The guardsmen needed shelter, a moment to regroup, or they would not survive the next assault. Alina's eyes caught a structure ahead, a ferrocrete bunker, half buried in the snow, its entrance a dark moor that offered the only refuge in sight. The chittering of the swarm echoed faintly, stirring for another strike, and Alina knew they had no time to hesitate. Her scar throbbed, her hip ached, and the miasma's whisper slithered through her thoughts, promising peace if she surrendered. She shook it off, her pendant cold against her chest, her Valhallan resolve a spark in the dark. "Into the bunker," Alina ordered, her voice hoarse from shouting, her scar burning with each heartbeat. She led the way, her lasgun raised, her boots crunching through the snow. each step sending a jolt of pain through her wounded hip. Ivan followed, limping from the Hormagaun's slash, his power maul dim but steady, its weight a comfort. Talia supported Lena, whose arm was black with plague, her face pale, but her scope still clutched like a talisman. Mikhail moved silently, his sapper's tool slung across his back, his eyes scanning for traps. They reached the bunker as the distant chittering grew louder, the miasma's weight pressing on their souls, urging them to kneel. The bunker's interior was a tomb, its ferrocrete walls slick with condensation, its air thick with the stench of rot and decay. Flickering lumen strips cast a sickly glow over rusted cogitators and scattered bones. Militia, their skulls blistered by plague, their lasguns rusted in skeletal hands, their uniforms reduced to tatters. Alina's boots crunched on ash and ice, her lasgun sweeping the shadows for threats. Ivan checked the left wall, his maul humming softly, while Talia guided Lena to a corner, her Medicae kit open as she examined the sharpshooter's wound. Mikhail took the right, his silence a steady pulse, his eyes darting to the entrance. For a moment, Alina dared to hope they had found sanctuary, a chance to breathe before the next fight, a flicker of defiance against the despair that clawed at her heart. That hope died as her eyes caught the walls. Symbols, carved into the ferrocrete, glowed with an unnatural green light, spiraling, jagged shapes that writhed like living things, their curves mimicking the chitinous forms of the Tyranids. They were not chaos sigils, but something older, alien. A crescent of claws encircling a pulsing orb that shimmered like a bioship's hull. The air grew colder, a psychic weight pressing on Alina's mind, a silent hum that wasn't sound but hunger, a whisper that slithered through her thoughts. Submit, become one. Her stomach churned, her scar burning as if the symbols saw her, their light a mockery of the Emperor's grace. She staggered, clutching her lasgun, her breath hitching in the freezing air. Emperor's blood, Ivan whispered, his maul faltering as he stared at the markings, his bearded face pale beneath the frost. This isn't human work. This is their work. The xenos have been here. His voice trembled, a crack in his Valhallan steel, and Alina felt her own dread rising, a primal terror that clawed at her discipline. She had faced heretics and orcs, but this was different. A violation of the Emperor's domain, a bunker meant for the faithful now defiled by alien hands. The realization struck like a lasbolt. The Tyranids weren't just attacking, they were infiltrating, reshaping Glarkum in their image, their plague a prelude to consumption. Lena groaned, her arm oozing black pus, the plague's touch spreading. Her eyes fevered as she muttered prayers. Talia worked frantically, her Medicae kit nearly empty, her hands shaking as she tried to stem the infection. It's in her blood, Talia said, her voice low, her eyes meeting Alina's with a grim understanding. The miasma, it's not just air, it's alive. Mikhail stepped back from the wall, his lasgun raised, his silence now a mask for fear. Alina felt the weight of their discovery, a grav plate of dread that crushed her resolve. A Vox unit in the corner sparked to life, its signal a hiss of static that morphed into a sound no machine should make. A chittering, layered hum that pulsed in time with the symbols, a hymn of consumption. The hum flooded Alina's mind with images, claws tearing ice, flesh melting into pools, towers of chitin piercing the sky. She staggered, clutching her head, the hum a blade that cut at her soul. Shut it off, she barked, stumbling toward the Vox, her fist slamming its casing. The sound persisted, growing louder, a chorus of hunger that drowned her prayers. Talia acted, her combat knife sparking as she drove it into the Vox, metal and circuitry burning, the hum cutting off abruptly. The silence was heavier, the symbols glowed, dimming but not fading, their light a taunt. "We need to report this," Ivan said, his voice shaking despite his strength. "The regiment needs to know. The xenos aren't just out there. They're inside our lines." "And tell Malin what?" Alina snapped, her fear turning to anger, her scar throbbing. "That we found their marks and lived? He'll shoot us for taint before we can explain. We're as good as dead if we speak." Ivan's jaw tightened, his eyes on the symbols, their light a mockery of the Emperor's grace. Lena's breathing grew shallow, her arm a ruin, the plague claiming her. Mikhail shifted, his lasgun trained on the entrance, the chittering outside growing closer, a tide of claws stirring in the haze. The bunker was no refuge, its walls a cage that trapped them, with the tyrannid's shadow. Alina felt the miasmas whisper, a promise of unity that clawed at her faith, and wondered if they could escape, or if the Emperor had forsaken them to the swarm's embrace. The air thickened, spores drifting through the entrance, stinging Alina's lungs, her scar burning as the hum returned, fainter but relentless. She checked her lasgun, its power pack at a quarter charge, and glanced at her squad. Ivan's maul dim, Talia's hands bloodied, Mikhail's silence strained, Lena's life fading. The Vox was dead, the regiment's fate unknown, and the domes were their only hope, a distant beacon in the haze. The chittering swelled, claws scraping nearby, and Alina braced, her pendant cold, her resolve ice. They had to move, warn the domes, or die in this defiled tomb. The symbols pulsed, their light a challenge, and Alina knew the fight was only beginning. The tyrannid's hunger, a tide that no lasgun could hold. The bunker on Glacium's snow-scoured plains was a defiled relic, its ferrocrete walls slick with condensation, etched with glowing tyrannid symbols that pulsed like a living plague. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood by the breached entrance, her lasgun trembling, its barrel hot from firing at termagants clawing through the dark. The air was thick with rot and a chittering hum that gnawed at her nerves, the ground trembling with the approach of something vast and alien. Sergeant Ivan gripped his power maul, its blue glow flickering, blood seeping from his wounded thigh, his bearded face a mask of Valhallan resolve. Talia knelt beside Lena, whose arm was a blackened ruin, her medikit kit useless against the plague that consumed the sharpshooter's flesh. Mikhail braced against a rusted cogitator, his lasgun trained on the entrance, his silence strained by the psychic weight that crushed them all. The Valhallan 312th Regiment was a fading memory. Sector 6, a graveyard of ichor and bone, and Glassum's agri domes were a distant hope under siege. Alina's scar burned along her brow, her hip wound throbbing with each heartbeat, but the miasma's whisper was a deeper pain, slithering through her thoughts. Submit, become one. The symbols on the walls, spiraling claws, a pulsing orb, had shown her visions, ice melting, flesh dissolving, towers piercing skies. The bunker was no sanctuary, its air heavy with spores that stung her lungs, its lumens flickering like dying stars. Alina's Akalila pendant hung cold against her chest, her prayers to the Emperor drowned by the whisper, her faith a fragile spark in Glacum's shadow. The Vox was silent, Commissar Marlin's fate unknown, and the regiment's orders were dust. They had to escape, warn the agreed domes of the xenos' infiltration, or watch Glatem fall to a hunger that devoured worlds. "We move now," Alina rasped, her voice raw from shouting over the chittering, her breath ragged from the spores that coated her throat. The domes are our only chance. Those symbols mean the xenos are inside our lines. Ivan nodded, his maul steady despite his pain, his eyes hard with determination. "We keep this from Malin," Talia growled, wiping sweat from Lena's fevered brow, her voice shaking with fear and resolve. Mikhail's gaze flicked to Alina, a silent question. "Can you hold it together, Korsakov?" The symbols pulsed, their glow brighter, as if feeding on the swarm's approach, and Alina felt the whisper sharpen, a blade in her soul. "You see us, we see you." The air grew colder, a psychic hum vibrating through the bunker, staggering Alina like a physical blow. Her knees buckled, her laser gun slipping as the whisper became a command. "Join us." Visions flooded her mind. Chitinous seas, skies of flesh, Glycem reduced to ash. She clutched her head, gasping, the hum a tide that drowned her thoughts. Ivan seized her arm, his grip iron, his growl cutting through the haze. "Alina, fight it. You're Valhallan, not their puppet." His words anchored her, the hum receding to a throb, but her voice trembled. "It's their mind, Ivan. It's in me, promising an end to pain. I don't know how long I can resist." Mikhail broke his silence, his voice low and urgent. "Your ice, Alina. Hold, or we're all dead." The chittering swelled, claws scraping ferrocrete, and Alina nodded, her pendant a cold weight against her chest. The bunker shook, dust falling from the ceiling, the symbols blazing like warp fire. A Vox unit sparked, its static morphing into a chittering hymn that pulsed with the walls, flooding Alina's mind with new images. Bioforms burrowing, spores choking air, a planet consumed. She slammed the Vox, sparks flying, but the hum grew, a chorus of hunger. Talia drove her knife into it, metal sizzling, the sound dying, but the symbol's glow lingered, mocking the Emperor's light. Lena's breathing stopped, her body still, the plague claiming her. Talia's hands froze, her eyes wet with grief, but she stood, her knife ready. The door exploded inward, termagants surging, their chitinous bodies all claws and oil-black eyes, flesh borers spitting beetles that burrowed into steel. Alina fired, crimson bolts burning hides, ichor steaming in the cold. Ivan's maul cleaved a hormigaunt, its halves twitching, his wounded thigh slowing his swing. Talia's knife slashed. Mikhail's shots were precise, but the swarm was endless, a tide that filled the bunker. A shadow loomed beyond, a plague father, its body a grotesque mass of sores and tentacles, its psychic aura a miasma that crushed minds, its eyes voids of hunger locked onto Alina, the whisper screaming, "You are mine." The plague father's will bound the bioforms, their claws moving as one, a symphony of death that tore through the bunker's relics. Alina's laser gun burned hot, its power pack low, each shot a desperate prayer. A termagant lunged, its claw grazing her shoulder, ichor burning flesh, and she screamed, firing point blank, the beast collapsing. Ivan parried a hormigaunt, his maul sparking, but his thigh bled freely, his face pale as ash. Talia fought with feral desperation, her knife a blur, but a beetle burrowed into her leg, her scream echoing. Mikhail dragged Alina back, shouting, "To the tunnel!" They retreated deeper, barricading a rear hatch with cogitators, claws tearing ferrocrete, the plague father's hum relentless. The tunnel was a narrow vein, its walls slick with alien slime, its air choking with spores that stung Alina's lungs. She sank to the floor, her chest heaving, the whisper a chorus. "Serve." end pain. Ivan leaned against the wall, his maul dim, his breath ragged. Talia limped, her leg blackened, her resolve unbroken. Mikhail's silence returned, his laser flickering, his eyes scanning the dark. Alina saw Yuri's bloodied body, Oleg's torn limbs, Katya's choked scream, Lena's still form, and felt their ghosts, a weight that broke her. "The xenos are everywhere," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if the domes are already gone?" Ivan glared, his Valhallan steel unyielding. "Then we die fighting, not hiding." The tunnel shook, claws scraping closer, the Plague Father's hum a blade in Alina's skull. The hatch groaned, termagants tearing through, their claws glinting in the dim light. Alina fired, her lasergun's last bolts a spark in the dark, ichor steaming as a bioform fell. Talia slashed, her knife dripping, her leg slowing her. Mikhail's shots burned, his silence a vow to hold. The Plague Father's shadow loomed, its saws weeping, its tentacles coiling, its will a storm that crushed hope. Alina's scar burned, her wounds bleeding, the whisper deafening, "Join us." She clutched her pendant, its edges cutting her palm, and screamed defiance, her lasergun blazing, a Valhallan spark against the xenos' tide. The tunnel was their last stand, a vein of ice and blood, and Alina fought, her heart aflame, her soul a shield, for Glatem, for the Emperor. If he still watched, the tunnel beneath Glatem's frozen plains was a suffocating vein, its walls dripping with alien slime, the air thick with spores that burned Corporal Alina Korsakov's lungs. Her lasergun was near spent, its barrel scorched from firing at termagants tearing through the bunker's rear hatch. Sergeant Ivan staggered beside her, his power maul flickering, blood pooling from his wounded thigh, his bearded face pale but resolute. Talia limped, her leg blackened by a beetle's plague, her combat knife gripped tight, her medici resolve a fading ember. Mikhail brought up the rear, his sapper's traps exhausted, his silence strained by the Plague Father's psychic hum that shook the earth. The Valhallan 312th was a ghost, Sector 6 a charnel pit, and Glatem's agridomes were under siege, their vox crying of breached walls and spores choking the air. Alina's scar seared, her shoulder wound burning from ichor, the miasma's whisper a relentless tide. "Join us. End struggle." The bunker's symbols, claws, orbs, towers, had shown her Glasem's fate. A world consumed, its ice dissolved, its bones harvested. The tunnel was no escape, its slime clinging to her boots, its walls pulsing with alien life. Her Aquila pendant hung cold, her prayers to the Emperor ash, her faith shattered by the tyrannid's hunger. The Vox fragment, spores, walls breached, meant the domes were falling, and Alina's squad was Glacham's last hope to warn the Imperium of the Xenos plague. "We reached the domes," Alina rasped, her voice raw, her breath ragged from spores that coated her throat. "We tell them the Xenos are inside, or Glasim's lost." Ivan nodded, his maul heavy, his eyes hard. "Malin'll shoot us for taint," Talia growled, wiping blood from her brow, her leg trembling. Mikhail's eyes met Alina's, a silent vow. "We survive." The tunnel shook, claws scraping closer, the Plague Father's hum, a psychic blade. "You cannot flee." Alina clutched her pendant, muttering, "Emperor, shield us." The words were hollow, her doubt a rot that fed the whisper, her scar burning as if the Xenos saw her. The tunnel opened to Glasim's tundra, a wasteland of snow and craters, the agridomes barely visible through green spore clouds that stung Alina's eyes. The ground pulsed, capillary towers rising, chitin spires, their veins throbbing with stolen biomass, drinking Glarkum's core. Digestion pools bubbled, a viscous slurry of dissolved corpses. Guardsmen, farmers, their screams silenced in acid. The air reeked of decay, spores coating Alina's greatcoat, her skin crawling with their touch. Glarsum wasn't just under attack, it was being harvested, remade into a tyrannid hive, its ice no shield against the swarm's hunger. A carnifex charged from the haze, its claws smashing ice, its hide a fortress of chitin. Ivan dove, his maul slashing, sparks flying as it grazed the beast. "Run!" he shouted, but the carnifex's claw swept, tearing his torso, blood and flak armor shredding. He screamed, his maul falling, his body crumpling into the snow, his Valhallan steel broken. Alina fired, her lasgun's bolts useless, ichor steaming as the beast roared. Talia dragged her back, Mikhail sprinting, the swarm pursuing through the haze. Alina's heart pounded, Ivan's death a blade in her soul, his growl echoing in her mind. The agridomes loomed, their plasteel walls cracked, their spires wreathed in spores, las fire flickering from ramparts where guardsmen fought a losing war. Commissar Malin's voice roared, his bolt pistol flashing, each shot a thunderclap against Hormagaunts. The streets were a slaughterhouse, ichor pooling, civilians dissolved in pools, their bones floating in slime. Alina, Talia, and Mikhail reached a shattered gate, diving into a trench as a zoanthrope's warp fire burned the air, its brain pulsing with psychic might. The whisper screamed, "All is ours." Alina's chest heaved, her squad's ghosts, Oleg, Katya, Yuri, Ivan, crushing her. The trench was a mire of snow and blood, its walls crumbling, guardsmen's corpses propped against flagboard. A Navy shuttle's roar sounded, a speck in the spore-choked sky, its grav engines a faint hope. The zoanthrope's hum grew, its warp fire searing the trench, and Alina felt the Plague Father's eyes, a presence that knew her name. They sprinted for a landing pad, termagants at their heels, Alina swinging her lasgun like a club, Talia's knife slashing, Mikhail's shots burning chitin. The shuttle hovered, its ramp open, a dozen guardsmen scrambling aboard, their faces pale, their lasguns spent. Marlin fought nearby, his greatcoat torn, his augmetic eye glowing as he fired. Ormagons tearing his men. Alina dove, Talia and Mikhail beside her, the ramp closing as claws scraped the hull. The shuttle climbed, the domes a ruin below. Capillary towers piercing spires, pools swallowing streets. Marlin's last shout faded, his fate unknown, the city a tomb. Alina slumped against the shuttle's wall, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs. Talia's leg oozed, her face pale, her knife still gripped. Mikhail's silence returned, his eyes on Alina. We made it, but what's left? The survivors huddled, their prayers silent, the shuttle's vox crackling. Course set, Voris of fleet awaits. Alina's pendant was cold, her faith gone, the whisper faint but eternal. We follow. Voris was their last refuge, but the tyrannid's hunger was a tide that crossed stars. Had they escaped, or were they carrying the xenos' taint to another world? As the shuttle shuddered, Alina gripped her scar, its burn a warning, and wondered if the Emperor's light could reach Voris, or if the Plague Father was already there. The shuttle's hold was a cold cage, its steel walls etched with purity seals, their aquilas accusing. Alina's wounds bled, shoulder, hip, thigh, her greatcoat a ruin. Talia's leg was a blackened mass, her breath shallow, her defiance a spark. Mikhail's silence was a vow, his laser gun empty, his eyes steady. The survivors, 10 now, sat in silence, their faces gaunt, their hope ash. The Vox crackled, a Navy ensign's voice. Voris in sight. Prepare for landing. Alina's heart sank. Voris was another battlefield, its fate tied to their warning. The whisper stirred, a shadow in her mind, and she clutched her pendant, its edges cutting, a defiance against despair. The shuttle descended, Voris's ash plains looming, and Alina braced, her laser gun gone, her soul scarred, ready for the Emperor's test, or the Xenos' feast.
Voris was a desolate grave,
Its ash plains scarred by the Tyrannid's relentless hunger, its skies choked with green spore clouds that smothered the stars. Corporal Alina Korsakov crouched in a shattered trench, her scavenged laser gun flickering, its power pack taken from a corpse, its steel cold against her torn greatcoat. Talia knelt beside her, her leg blackened by plague, her Medicase kit empty, her face pale with grief for Ivan and the others. Mikhail scanned the horizon, his silence a fragile anchor in the chaos of their crash-landed Navy shuttle. The Valhallan 312th was reduced to 30 survivors, scattered in a ruined outpost of ferrocrete and twisted steel, their hope as broken as the rigs melted by bioacids. The air reeked of ichor and decay, the ground pulsing with alien life, a heartbeat that mocked the Emperor's dominion. Alina's scar burned, her shoulder and hip wounds aching, her arms seared by a termagant's ichor on Glasim. The agridomes haunted her, Ivan's torn body, Yuri's bloodied scream, capillary towers drinking the ice, digestion pools dissolving spires. The Plague Father's whisper clung to her mind, a soft hum that slithered through her thoughts. You are alone. Join us. Her Aquila pendant was cold, its edges worn from desperate prayers, her faith reduced to ash in Voris's shadow. The shuttle's crash had killed half their number, leaving Captain Petra Volkov to rally the survivors, her Vox crackling with orders to hold the outpost until a fleet signal could be sent. The outpost was a skeletal ruin, its walls breached by claws, its promethium tanks ruptured, leaking fire into ash. Capillary towers loomed on the horizon, their chitinous veins throbbing, siphoning Voris core like parasites. Digestion pools bubbled nearby, their corrosive sludge churning guardsmen and civilians into a viscous slurry, their bones floating in acid. A salvaged Vox log, its casing cracked red. The swarm harvests with surgical precision, leaving only dust in its wake. Alina's heart sank. Voris was Glacum's echo, its cities dissolved, its people consumed, its fate sealed unless the survivors could signal the Imperium's fleet. Volkov stood atop a breached wall, her greatcoat tattered, her last pistol raised. Hold this ground, she barked, her voice hoarse. The Emperor demands our blood, and we give it gladly. The survivors, gaunt, bloodied, fortified trenches with flakboard, their laser guns trembling, their eyes hollow from Glasim's horrors. Alina checked her laser gun, its power pack at half charge, and muttered, "Emperor, guide us." The words were hollow, her doubt a rot that fed the whisper. Your Emperor cares not. We offer unity. The air chilled, spores stinging her lungs, her vision blurring as the psychic hum grew, urging her to kneel. Mikhail broke his silence, his voice low. They're coming, Alina. We're too few for this. Alina nodded, her laser gun trembling, her scar searing. We signal the fleet, or Voris is ash. The survivors braced, laser guns raised, but 30 against the swarm was a prayer unanswered. The chittering rose, a roar that shook the earth, and Alina felt the whisper sharpen. Visions of pools and towers flooding her mind. She clutched her pendant, its edges cutting her palm, and fought the hum, her Valhallan discipline a spark against despair. Termagants erupted from the ash, their claws glinting, flesh borers spitting beetles that burrowed into flagboard. Alina fired, crimson bolts burning Krythean, ichor steaming in the cold. Talia's knife slashed, Mikhail's shots were precise, but the swarm surged, hormagaunts leaping through spores, a tide that drowned the outpost. A lictor materialized, its chameleonic skin shimmering, and Alina dove, its talons slashing her thigh, ichor burning flesh. She screamed, firing point blank, the lictor collapsing, but the swarm pressed, claws tearing armor, blood mixing with slime. Volkov's last pistol barked, guardsmen falling beside her, their screams swallowed by chittering. Alina dragged Talia to a breached rig, Mikhail following, the survivors breaking under the swarm's weight. A Carnifex charged, its claws smashing Ferrocrete, and Volkov fired, her last pistol useless. The beast's claw crushed her body a ruin, her Vox falling silent. Alina and her squad dove into a ditch, its walls crumbling, slime clinging to their boots, the outpost a lost cause. The ditch was a shallow grave, its air thick with spores, the ground pulsing with the tower's hunger. Talia's leg oozed, her breath ragged, her knife a defiance. Mikhail's silence returned, his eyes scanning the dark, his laser gun near spent. A distant hum sounded, not the swarm, but grav engines, a shuttle's roar piercing the spore-choked sky. Its silhouette flickered, a navy craft, but was it salvation or doom? Alina gripped her laser gun, her scar burning, her pendant a cold weight, and wondered if Voris held a darker fate, or if the Plaguefather's whisper would follow her to the stars. The ditch was a mire of ash and blood, its walls collapsing under the swarm's claws. Alina's wounds bled, her laser gun flickering, her squad's ghosts crushing her soul. The shuttle landed, its ramp hissing, an ensign waving survivors aboard. Alina sprinted, Talia limping, Mikhail covering, termagants at their heels. The survivors, 10 now, reached the ramp, claws scraping steel, the shuttle lifting as hormagaunts leapt, their screeches fading. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, the whisper faint, "We follow." Voris shrank below, a ruin of towers and pools, its people consumed. The Vox crackled. Fleet inbound, prepare for Inquisitorial review. Alina's blood ran cold. The Inquisition was a spectre, its judgment a blade. Her knowledge of the symbols marked her as tainted, a heretic to be burned. The shuttle's hum was a dirge, and Alina gripped her pendant, her scar burning, ready for the Emperor's wrath, or the Xenos' hunger. The Navy's shuttle's hold was a cold, sterile cage, its walls etched with purity seals that glowed faintly, as if judging the souls within. Corporal Alina Korsakov sat on a steel bench, her hands bound by mag cuffs, her greatcoat a tattered ruin of blood, ash, and ichor. Talia sat beside her, her leg blackened, her knife confiscated, her face pale with pain and defiance. Mikhail stood nearby, his silence heavy, his laser gun taken, his eyes fixed on the floor where hope had died. The shuttle's engines hummed, a low dirge carrying them from Voris's ashes to an Imperial fleet orbiting a dying star. The Plague Father's psychic roar lingered in Alina's mind. The hive mind's whisper a faint hum. You are ours. Her scar burned, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, searing, her faith reduced to dust. Voris was a molten scar, its crust shattered by cyclonic torpedoes, its capillary towers and digestion pools erased in a firestorm that consumed billions. The Valhallan 3/12 was gone. Ivan torn by a carnifex, Eerie ripped apart, Marlin's fate unknown. Glaakham's fall echoed in Alina's memory, its domes dissolved, its people harvested. Her Aquila pendant hung cold, its prayers a lie, the Emperor's light drowned by the Inquisition's shadow. The Vox's warning, Inquisitor awaits, was a blade at Alina's throat. Her knowledge of Glaakham's symbols, the whisper, marked her as tainted, a heretic to be purged. The Hold's viewport showed the fleet, Gothic-class cruisers, their hulls bristling with macro cannons, their lances glowing like stars. The shuttle docked, its ramp hissing open, and stormtroopers in black carapace armor marched Alina, Talia, and Mikhail through corridors lined with devotional icons, their lumens flickering like dying hopes. The air was thick with incense, but Alina felt the whisper, a shadow no seal could banish. They entered a black chamber, its walls adorned with skulls, its throne occupied by Lord Inquisitor Varic, Ordo Xenos. His dark robes billowed, his scarred face a mask of zeal, his plasma pistol humming with a green glow. A servo skull hovered, its augmetic eye whirring, its Vox unit clicking like a death knell. Corporal Alina Korsakov, Trooper Talia Vren, Trooper Mikhail Dorn. Varic's voice was ice, cutting the chamber's silence. Voris is lost. Its taint a cancer that threatened the Imperium. You fled, bearing the Xenos' mark. Symbols carved in bunkers, whispers in your minds. You are guilty of failure, perhaps heresy. Alina's heart pounded, the whisper stirring. He sees you. Join us. She rose, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. We fought, my lord. Glassam fell, Voris burned, but we killed their bioforms, held until the Plague Father came. We warned of the symbols, escaped to warn the fleet. We're loyal to the Emperor. Varic's eyes narrowed, his servo skull circling, its eye glowing red. Loyalty is not enough. You saw their marks, felt their mind, and Voris' fall is your burden. The great Devourer's taint clings to you, a stain no prayer can cleanse. He turned to a stormtrooper, his voice low. Signal the fleet. Exterminatus complete. Cyclonic torpedoes have scoured Voris. The Xenos take nothing. The trooper saluted, his vox crackling, and Alina's breath caught. Billions dead, farmers, guardsmen, children, burned to ash to stop the swarm. The whisper mocked, your emperor devours too. Varic's gaze returned, his pistol humming. Speak, Korsakov. Why should you live when worlds die for your failure? Alina's scar throbbed, Ivan's scream echoing, Yuri's blood on her hands. She thought of Glatim's trenches, the bunker's symbols, the Plague Father's tentacles. We fought for Glasim, for Voris, she said, her voice raw. I feel their whisper, but I resist. For the fallen, for the Imperium. Use us, my lord, our blood, our lace guns, to hunt the Xenos. Talia spoke, her voice a growl. We bled for those worlds, Inquisitor. Don't waste us on a pyre. Mikhail nodded, his silence a vow. Varic's face was unreadable, his servo skull clicking, recording their words. The chamber's lumens flickered, the whisper louder. "He will burn you. Join us." Alina clutched her pendant, its edges cutting her palm, a spark of defiance against despair. Varic stood, his robe sweeping the floor, his pistol steady. "The Emperor's wars demand blades, even tarnished ones. You will serve my retinue under the Ordo's eye, hunting the great devourer across the stars. Fail, and you burn." Alina's heart steadied, a purpose sparking. Avenge even, defy the whisper, fight for the fallen. Talia and Mikhail nodded, their resolve unbroken. But Varic's servo skull lingered, its eye a constant threat. The whisper faded, but Alina felt his chain, a taint she'd carry forever. The chamber's vox crackled. Fleet reports, bioships detected, Quadrant 7, Hive fleet signatures. Varic's face darkened, his voice grim. "The swarm follows, as I feared." Alina's stomach churned. The Tyranids were not done, their hunger a tide that crossed the void. The fleet's klaxons sounded, crew chanting litanies, the air heavy with war's promise. The bioships were a new threat, their chitinous forms evolving, their maws pulsing with hunger. What horror did they bring, and could Alina's soul withstand their call? As Varic led them from the chamber, Alina gripped her pendant, her scar burning, and wondered if the Emperor's wrath would burn her, or if the hive mind's hunger would claim her first. The corridors were a maze of steel and incense, stormtroopers flanking the retinue, their hellguns glowing, their eyes hidden behind visors. Alina's wounds ached, her greatcoat a tattered shroud, her lasgun returned but heavy with the weight of survival. Talia limped, her leg a ruin, her defiance a spark that refused to die. Mikhail's silence was a prayer, his gaze steady, his resolve ice. The fleet was a bastion, its cruisers a shield against the void, but the bioships were a shadow that no lance could burn. Alina felt the whisper, a faint hum that promised unity, and fought it, her pendant a cold anchor, her scar a warning. The Emperor's wars awaited, and Alina would fight, not for glory, but for the fallen, for Glasim, for Voris, for the spark of ice in her soul. The Inquisitorial cruiser's command deck was a cathedral of steel and shadow, its towering viewports framing a void where Voris ashes faded, a molten scar erased by the merciless fire of exterminatus. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood before Lord Inquisitor Varic, her tattered greatcoat a map of blood and ichor, her hands free, but her soul bound by the Ordo Xenos' unyielding scrutiny. Talia stood beside her, her leg bandaged but blackened, her medical resolve a faint ember, her eyes defiant. Mikhail's silence was a solemn vow, his lasgun returned, its stock scarred but steady. The Plague Father's whisper lingered, a faint hum that slithered through Alina's thoughts. "We see you." Her scar burned, her wound shoulder, hip, thigh constant ache, but a spark of defiance burned brighter, forged in Glacham's trenches, tempered by Voris's ruin. The deck's lumens cast a cold glow, devotional icons glaring from walls adorned with purity seals, their aquilas accusing. Varic's dark robes billowed, his scarred face etched with zeal, his plasma pistol humming with a green light that promised death. His servo skull hovered, its augmetic eye whirring, its vox unit clicking like a metronome of judgment. The Imperial fleet, Gothic-class cruisers, frigates, destroyers, orbited a dying star, their hulls bristling with lances, their crew chanting litanies of war. Voris was gone, its billions burned to stop the Tyranids' advance, but the Vox had warned of bioships in Quadrant 7. their chitinous forms a hunger undimmed, a shadow that stretched across the stars. Varic spoke, his voice a hymn of wrath that echoed through the deck. Voris is dust, its taint purged by fire, but the great devourer endures, its hunger a blasphemy against the Emperor's light. You, Korsakov, Vren, Dawn, tools of his will, tempered by loss, scarred by the xenos' touch. Serve well, hunt the swarm, or burn in his judgment. Alina met Varic's gaze, her heart steady despite the whisper's hum. You cannot stop us. She thought of Glacham's symbols, Voris pools, the Plague Father's tentacles. We'll hunt them, my lord, she said, her voice raw but firm. For Ivan, Yuri, Glacham, Voris, their blood demands it. We're Valhallan, ice, not flesh. Talia nodded, her pain a vow, her eyes burning with defiance. Mikhail's silence was a prayer, his gaze reflecting the void's cold stars. The whisper stirred, but Alina's pendant warmed, a flicker of purpose drowning the hum. Varic's servo-skull circled, its eye glowing, recording their oath. The deck's vox crackled, a captain's voice urgent. Bioships closing, Quadrant 7, Hive fleet signatures. They're evolving, adapting. Varic's face darkened, his pistol steady. The swarm learns as we must. Prepare for war. Alina's stomach churned. The Tyranids were a tide, their biology a nightmare. Spores choking lungs, towers drinking worlds, synaptic pulses binding claws. The war was endless, but Alina's fight was personal. Avenge the fallen, silence the whisper, prove the Emperor saw her even if his light was faint. Talia broke her silence, her voice rough with pain. You still hear it, Alina? The Xenos' call clawing at you. Alina nodded, her scar throbbing, her wounds aching. Every moment, like ash on the wind. But I'll fight it, Talia, for them, for us, for every world they've taken. Talia's eyes softened, her hand gripping Alina's arm. A bond forged in Glacham's blood, strengthened in Voris's ash. Mikhail spoke, his voice low. Ice, not flesh we hold, together. The words were a vow, and Alina gripped her lasgun, its weight a promise, a blade against the hive mind's shadow. Varic led them to a strategium, its hololiths flickering with images of bioships, chitinous leviathans, their maws pulsing, their tendrils coiling like living voids. They strike at Nexara next, Varic said, his voice grim, his finger tracing the hololith's arcs. A forge world, its manufactorums vital to the Imperium. We meet them there, with fire, steel, and faith. Alina studied the hololiths, seeing capillary towers piercing Nexara's crust, digestion pools swallowing forges, a hunger that devoured stars. Her mind flashed to Glacham's plains, Voris ruins, the billions lost to the swarm's hunger. Her faith was broken, but purpose was enough. A lasgun to wield, a vow to keep. The stratageum's air grew heavy, klaxons sounding, the cruiser's crew moving with disciplined haste, their voices rising in litanies. Emperor, guide our aim. Shield us from the dark. Alina, Talia, and Mikhail were armed, their flak armor patched, their lasguns charged, their wounds bandaged but aching. Stormtroopers flanked them, their hellguns glowing, their carapace armor gleaming. Varic's retinue, a machine of war. The whisper faded, drowned by the hum of engines, the clank of steel, the rhythm of prayers. Alina thought of the 312th, Ivan's stern growl, Yuri's frantic prayers. Marlin, the Inquisitorial cruiser blade of sanctity, was a cathedral of war. its steel corridors ringing with litanies, its lumens casting a cold glow over purity seals that adorned every bulkhead. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood in the strategium, her patched greatcoat stiff with dried blood and ichor, her scavenged laser gun heavy in her hands, its power pack humming faintly. Talia Vren, her leg a blackened ruin from Glassim's plague, leaned against a hololith table, her medici knife replaced with a las pistol, her eyes burning with defiance despite her pain. Mikhail Dorn stood silent, his laser gun scarred but steady, his gaze fixed on the hololiths that flickered with images of tyrannid bioships, chitinous leviathans, their maws pulsing, their tendrils coiling like voids. The Plague Father's whisper lingered in Alina's mind, a soft hum that slithered through her thoughts. You cannot stop us. Her scar burned along her brow, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, aching, but her Valhallan resolve was ice, a spark against the hive mind's shadow. Lord Inquisitor Varic, Ordo Xenos, loomed before the hololiths, his dark robes billowing, his scarred face a mask of zeal, his plasma pistol glowing green at his hip. His servo skull hovered, its augmetic eye whirring, its vox unit clicking like a death knell. The strategium's air was thick with incense, but the whisper pierced it, a psychic weight that pressed on Alina's soul. The Imperial fleet orbited a dying star, its Gothic-class cruisers bristling with lances, but the bioships in Quadrant 7 were closing, their hunger a tide that devoured worlds. Nexara, a forge world of molten forges and adamantine spires, was their target, its manufactorums vital to the Imperium's war machine. If Nexara fell, the sector would starve for weapons, and the Tyrannids would feast unchallenged. Varic's voice was a blade, cutting through the klaxons that echoed from the deck. Nexara is the crucible where we break the Great Devourer's spine, or where we burn. The bioships evolve, their biology adapting to our fire. We strike their synaptic hub, a bioform we name the Plague Father, whose mind binds the swarm. Sever it, and their claws falter. The hololiths shifted, showing Nexara's surface, foundries belching smoke, canals of molten steel, and capillary towers rising like cancers, their veins throbbing with stolen biomass. Digestion pools churned, dissolving Skitarii and servitors into slurry, their screams silenced in acid. Alina's stomach churned. Glassim's ice, Voris's ash, now Nexara's steel, all consumed by the same hunger. Alina stepped forward, her voice raw but steady. My lord, we've seen their symbols, felt their whisper. The Plague Father knows us, me, Talia, Mikhail. If we face it, we risk its call. Varic's eyes narrowed, his servo skull circling, its eye glowing red. You are marked, Korsakov, but tools are forged in fire. You will descend to Nexara, find the hub, and burn it, or the Emperor's wrath will claim you. Talia growled, her last pistol trembling. We're no strangers to fire, Inquisitor. We'll kill it, for Ivan, for Glashem. Mikhail nodded, his silence a vow, his eyes reflecting the hololith's green glow. Alina gripped her laser gun, her pendant warm against her chest, a flicker of purpose drowning the whisper. You are alone. The stratagium's vox crackled, a captain's voice urgent. Bioships engaging, Quadrant 7. Lances firing. They're breaching our line. The deck shuddered, the cruiser's macro cannons roaring, their thunder a hymn of defiance. Varic turned, his plasma pistol drawn. To the drop pods, we strike Nexara's primary forge, where the hub festers. The Emperor guides us. Alina, Talia, and Mikhail followed, flanked by stormtroopers in black carapace armor, their hellguns glowing, their visors hiding eyes that judged. The corridors were a blur of steel and incense, crew chanting litanies, klaxons screaming as the fleet burned. Alina's scar throbbed, her wounds aching, but her heart was ice, her lasgun a blade against the void. The drop pod bay was a cavern of iron, its pods gleaming like coffins, their hatches hissing with promethium steam. Alina strapped in, her lasgun across her chest, Talia beside her, Mikhail opposite, their faces pale in the red lumens. Varic entered, his robe sweeping, a melter gun slung across his back, his servo skull trailing. Nexara's forges are a battlefield, he said, his voice grim. Skitarii hold the line, but the swarm overwhelms. Find the Plaguefather's hub, plant charges and burn it. Fail, and Nexara is lost. The pod sealed, its clamps releasing, and Alina's stomach lurched as it plummeted, the void a fleeting glimpse through a slit viewport. Bioships coiling in the dark. The pod screamed through Nexara's atmosphere, its hull glowing red, the air thick with spores that stung Alina's lungs through her rebreather. The whisper grew, a psychic blade. You come to us. Visions flooded her mind, towers piercing forges, pools swallowing steel, flesh melting into chitin. She clutched her pendant, its edges cutting her palm, and fought the hum, her prayers to the Emperor Ash, but her resolve unyielding. Talia's hand gripped hers, her pain a shared vow. Mikhail's silence was a prayer, his eyes steady. The pod slammed into Nexara's surface, its hatches bursting open, and Alina stumbled into a hellscape of fire and steel. Nexara's primary forge was a cathedral of industry, its spires wreathed in smoke, its canals of molten steel glowing like rivers of fire. Capillary towers loomed, their veins pulsing, siphoning the planet's core. Digestion pools bubbled, dissolving Skitarii, their augmetics floating in acid. Skitarii fought in disciplined ranks, their radium rifles blazing, but termagants swarmed, their claws tearing steel, flesh borers spitting beetles that burrowed into circuits. A carnifex roared, its claws smashing a forge tower, molten steel raining like blood. Alina fired, her lasgun's bolts burning chitin, ichor steaming in the heat. Talia's las pistol barked, Mikhail's shots precise. Varic's melter gun vaporizing a hormigaunt in a flash of white fire. The whisper screamed, "You are ours." Alina staggered, her scar searing, visions of the Plague Father's tentacles flooding her mind. Varic seized her arm, his voice a lash. "Fight it, Korsakov. The hub is near." They pushed through the forge, Skitarii falling, their vox chanting binary prayers. A zoanthrope hovered, its warp fire burning the air, and Varic's melter gun roared, its brain exploding in a psychic scream that staggered Alina. The hub loomed, a pulsating mass of chitin and flesh, its veins throbbing, the Plague Father's eyes glowing within, a void of hunger that knew her name. Alina's lasgun trembled, her heart ice, her pendant a cold anchor. The swarm surged, claws glinting, and Alina braced, her squad's ghosts, Ivan, Yuri, Lena, her strength, her fight, Nexara's last hope. The forge was a crucible, its air choking with spores, its steel melting under the swarm's hunger. Alina's wounds bled, her lasgun low, Talia's leg slowing her, Mikhail's silence strained. Varic's servo skull circled, its eye glowing, recording their stand. The hub pulsed, its hum a tide that crushed hope. The Plague Father's will binding the swarm. Alina checked her lasgun, its power pack at a quarter charge, and muttered, "Emperor, Guide us." The words were hollow, but her resolve was ice. Her fight for the fallen, for Nexara, for the Imperium. The chittering swelled, a tide of claws, and Alina fired, her laser gun a spark, her soul a shield, ready for the Emperor's test, or the Xenos' feast. Nexara's primary forge was a molten inferno, its adamantine spires wreathed in green spore clouds, its canals of liquid steel glowing like wounds in the earth. Corporal Alina Korsakov crouched behind a shattered cogitator, her laser gun scorching her hands, its power pack flickering from relentless firing at the tyrannid swarm. Talia Vren knelt beside her, her last pistol smoking, her blackened leg trembling, her medici training useless against the spores that coated her lungs. Mikhail Dorn braced against a steel beam, his laser gun's barrel red-hot, his silence a taut vow as Hormagaunts tore through Skitaria lines. Lord Inquisitor Varic stood like a black monolith, his melter gun blazing, his servo skull circling, its augmetic eye glowing red in the forge's gloom. The Plague Father's synaptic hub loomed, a pulsating mass of chitin and flesh, its veins throbbing, its core glowing with eyes that pierced Alina's soul. The whisper screamed, "You are home." Alina's scar seared, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, bleeding through her tattered greatcoat, her rebreather choking on spores that burned her throat. The hub was the Tyrannid's heart on Nexara, the Plague Father's will binding the swarm, its psychic hum a tide that crushed her mind. Glasem's trenches, Voris ashes, the 3/12 ghosts, Ivan's torn body, Yuri's scream, Lena's plague, haunted her. Their weight, a chain that anchored her to duty. Her Aquila pendant hung cold, her prayers to the Emperor drowned by the whisper, "Join us, end pain." The forge was a graveyard, Skitarii dissolving in digestion pools, their augmetics sizzling, termagants swarming over steel, their claws glinting in the molten glow. Varic's voice was a thunderclap, cutting through the chittering roar. The hub must burn. Plant the charges or Nexara is lost. His melter gun vaporized the Carnifex's limb, ichor steaming. But the beast charged, its claws smashing a Skitarii cohort. Alina clutched a melter charge, its weight a death sentence, its timer ticking like her pulse. "Cover me," she shouted, sprinting toward the hub, her laser gun blazing, crimson bolts burning termagants, their screeches echoing in the forge. Talia fired, her last pistol shots weak but defiant, her leg buckling under her weight. Mikhail's shots were precise, dropping Hormagaunts, his silence a blade against the swarm's hunger. The hub's veins pulsed, its flesh parting to reveal the Plague Father, a grotesque bioform. Its body a mass of sores and tentacles, its eyes voids of hunger that locked onto Alina. The whisper became a command. Kneel, become one. Visions flooded her mind. Nexara dissolved, forges consumed, stars devoured. She staggered, her scar burning, her pendant cutting her palm as she fought the hum, her Valhallan ice a spark against despair. A termagant lunged, its claws slashing her arm, ichor burning flesh, and she screamed, firing point blank, the beast collapsing. Varic's melter gun roared, clearing a path, his servo skull's vox chanting, "Purge the Xeno for the Emperor." Alina reached the hub, its flesh warm and pulsating, its veins oozing slime that stung her skin. She slammed the melter charge into a crevice, its timer set for 5 minutes, a heartbeat in the forge's chaos. The Plague Father's eyes glowed, its tentacles coiling, a psychic scream staggering her, visions of chitinous seas drowning her mind. Talia dragged her back, her last pistol empty, her knife slashing a Hormagaun's throat. ichor spraying. Mikhail fired, his lasgun failing, and he swung it like a club, crushing a termagant's skull. Varic fought like a storm, his melter gun burning bioforms, but a zoanthrope's warp fire seared his arm, his roar defiant as he fired back. The swarm surged, a tide of claws and fangs, the hub's pulse quickening as if sensing its doom. Alina's lasgun was spent, her arm bleeding, her scar a fire that matched the forge's glow. "Fall back," Varic bellowed, his servo skull sparking, its eye dimming. They retreated, Skitarii covering with radium rifles, their binary prayers a faint hymn against the chittering. A Carnifex charged, its claws smashing steel, and Alina dove, the beast's roar shaking her bones. Talia stumbled, her leg a ruin, and Mikhail hauled her up, his silence broken by a growl. "Move, Vren!" The timer ticked, 3 minutes, each second a blade at their throats. The forge's canals boiled, molten steel spilling as capillary towers drank Nexara's core. Digestion pools bubbled, their acid claiming Skitarii, their screams silenced. Alina's chest heaved, spores choking her lungs, the whisper relentless. "You cannot flee." She thought of Ivan's sacrifice, Yuri's terror, Glasim's fall, and fought the hum, her pendant a cold anchor. Varic led them to a shattered ramp, its steel groaning, a Navy shuttle's roar sounding above, its grav engines a fleeting hope. The swarm pursued, termagants leaping, their flesh borers spitting beetles that burrowed into flak armor. Alina swung her lasgun, crushing a bioform, her arm numb, her resolve ice. The ramp collapsed, steel buckling, and Alina fell, her wounded hip screaming as she hit the ground. Talia and Mikhail dragged her into a trench, its walls slick with slime, its air thick with spores. Varic fired, his melter gun a beacon, but the zoanthrope's warp fire burned his leg, his servo skull crashing, its vox silent. The timer hit 1 minute, the hub's pulse a thunder that shook the forge. The shuttle hovered, its ramp open, stormtroopers firing hellguns, their beams cutting bioforms. Alina sprinted, Talia limping, Mikhail covering, the swarm at their heels. The melter charge detonated, a white-hot flash that vaporized the hub. The Plague Father's scream a psychic wail that staggered Alina, her mind burning with its death throes. The shuttle lifted, claws scraping its hull. Nexara's forges a ruin below, capillary towers collapsing, pools boiling dry. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs, her scar searing. Talia's leg oozed, her face pale, her defiance unbroken. Mikhail's silence returned, his eyes on Alina. "We did it." Varic slumped, his arm and leg burned, his plasma pistol steady, his zeal unyielding. The survivors, 10 now, huddled, their prayers silent, the shuttle's vox crackling. Nexara holds, fleet engages bioships. Alina's pendant was cold, the whisper faint, but alive. "We endure." Had they broken the swarm, or merely delayed its hunger? As the shuttle climbed, Alina gripped her scar, its burn a warning, and wondered if the Emperor's light could hold Nexara, or if the Plague Father's shadow lingered in her soul. The shuttle's hold was a cold tomb, its steel walls etched with aquillas, their judgment heavy. Alina's wounds bled, her lasgun gone, her greatcoat a shroud. Talia's leg was a blackened mass, her breath shallow, her last pistol empty. Mikhail's silence was a vow, his eyes steady, his resolve ice. The fleet loomed, its cruisers a shield, but the bioships were a tide, their hunger undimmed. Alina felt the whisper, a shadow in her mind, and fought it, her pendant cutting her palm, a defiance against despair. Nexara burned below, its forges scarred but holding, and Alina braced, her heart ice, her soul scarred, ready for the Emperor's wars or the Xenos' feast. The Blade of Sanctity's hold was a steel crypt, its walls etched with purity seals that flickered in the dim lumens, their aquilers glaring like silent judges. Corporal Alina Korsakov slumped against a bulkhead, her tattered greatcoat a shroud of blood and ichor, her scavenged laser gun empty, its barrel scorched from Nexara's forge war. Talia Vren sat beside her, her leg a blackened ruin, oozing pus through crude bandages, her last pistol lost, her Medicae's defiance a fading spark. Mikhail Dorn stood apart, his silence heavy, his laser gun clutched like a prayer, his eyes fixed on the void beyond the viewport. Bioships coiling, their chitinous maws pulsing green. The Plague Father's whisper clung to Alina's mind, a soft hum that wove despair. You cannot flee. Her scar burned, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, arm, searing, her aquila pendant cold, her faith ash after Nexara's crucible. The shuttle had escaped Nexara's burning forges, the Plague Father's synaptic hub destroyed, its psychic scream a wound in Alina's soul. But the victory was hollow. Nexara's manufactorums were scarred, Skitarii reduced to slag, and the Tyrannid bioships now engaged the Imperial fleet in Quadrant 7. The Blade of Sanctity shuddered, macro cannons roaring, lances burning the void, their thunder a hymn drowned by chittering static on the Vox. Lord Inquisitor Varic, his arm and leg burned, stood in the hold center, his dark robes torn, his plasma pistol glowing, his servo skull shattered on Nexara. The swarm adapts, he growled, his scarred face grim. Synaptic bioforms disrupt our fleet. We board their hive ship, destroy its node, or the sector falls. Alina's stomach churned. Boarding a bioship was suicide, a plunge into the hive mind's heart. Glassem's trenches, Voris's ashes, Nexara's molten canals, Ivan's torn body, Yuri's scream, Lena's plague, haunted her, their ghosts a chain that bound her to duty. The whisper stirred, visions of her squad consumed by chitinous seas, her laser gun useless, her soul claimed. She fought it, her pendant cutting her palm, her Valhallan ice a spark against despair. My lord, she rasped, her voice raw from spores. We felt the Plague Father's mind. If we board, its whisper could break us. Varic's eyes narrowed, his pistol steady. You are marked, Korsakov, but the Emperor's fire tempers steel. Refuse and you burn now. Talia growled, her pain a vow. We've bled enough, Inquisitor. Give us laser guns, and we'll carve their heart. Mikhail broke his silence, his voice low, trembling. I saw it, Alina. On Nexara, in the hub. My death, eaten alive. My bones in their pools. I'm afraid. His admission struck Alina like a lasbolt. Mikhail's silence had been her anchor, now cracked. She gripped his shoulder, her scar throbbing. We're ice, Mikhail. We hold for Ivan, for Nexara. He nodded, his eyes steadying, his laser gun raised. The whisper mocked. You fear us. Join us. Alina's heart pounded, her resolve a fragile thread in the void shadow. The fleet's klaxons screamed, the deck tilting as bioplasma seared the cruiser's hull. Varic led them to a boarding torpedo bay, its steel cavern echoing with litanies, stormtroopers in black carapace armor chanting, Emperor, guide our blades. Alina, Talia, and Mikhail were armed with fresh laser guns, their flak armor patched, promethium grenades slung across their chests. The torpedo was a coffin of adamantine, its interior cramped, its lumens red like blood. Varic strapped in, his melter gun ready, his zeal a fire that burned without warmth. "The hive ship's node is its mind," he said. "Burn it, and the swarm falters. Fail, and the Emperor's wrath awaits." The torpedo sealed, its engines igniting, and Alina's stomach lurched as it launched, the void a fleeting glimpse of bioships and lances. The torpedo pierced the hive ship's hide, its hull pulsating, veins throbbing with green ichor. The hatch blew open, and Alina stumbled into a nightmare. Walls of flesh, dripping slime, spores choking the air. The bioship's interior was alive, its corridors writhing, claws skittering in the dark. Neurothropes hovered, their brains pulsing. Psychic screams staggering Alina. Visions of Talia's leg dissolving, Mikhail's bones floating. She fired, crimson bolts burning flesh, ichor steaming in the heat. Talia's laser gun barked, her leg slowing her face pale but defiant. Mikhail's shots were precise, his fear buried in silence, his laser gun a prayer. Varic's melter gun roared, vaporizing a venom thrope, its spores bursting in a toxic cloud that burned Alina's lungs. The whisper screamed, "You are ours." Alina clutched her pendant, her scar searing, the bioship's pulse a heartbeat that crushed her mind. A neurothrope's warp fire seared her arm, ichor burning flesh, and she screamed, firing point blank, its brain exploding. Talia stumbled, her leg oozing, a venom thrope's claw grazing her back, her laser gun blazing, a Hormagaunt scythed arm slashing his thigh, blood soaking his greatcoat. Varic fought like a storm, his melter gun a beacon, but the swarm surged. Termagants tearing stormtroopers, their screams swallowed by chittering. The node loomed, a pulsating brain, its veins glowing, synaptic pulses binding the swarm, the Plague Father's echo within. Alina planted a promethium grenade, its timer ticking, a 5-minute death knell. The whisper roared, visions of her squad consumed, her soul drowned in unity. She fought it, her pendant a cold anchor, her laser gun blazing. Varic's melter gun burned a path, but a neurothrope scream staggered him, his plasma pistol sparking. "Go!" he bellowed, firing, his zeal unyielding. They retreated, the bioship's walls closing, claws tearing flesh. Talia limped, her leg a ruin. Mikhail supporting her, his thigh bleeding. The grenade detonated, a firestorm that burned the node. The bioship scream a psychic wail that staggered Alina, her mind fracturing under its weight. An extraction torpedo waited, its hatch open, stormtroopers firing hell guns. Alina dove, Talia and Mikhail beside her, Varic covering, his melter gun dimming. The torpedo launched, the bioship collapsing, its moors imploding. The blade of sanctity loomed, its lances burning, but the fleet was battered. Cruisers drifting, their hulls breached. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs, her scar searing. Talia's leg oozed, her face ashen, her defiance unbroken. Mikhail's silence returned, his eyes haunted. I faced it. Varic slumped, his wounds bleeding, his zeal a fading fire. The Vox crackled. Fleet holds, bioships retreat, Nexara stands, but the cost was a wound. Hundreds of ships, millions of souls, burned in the void. The hold was a tomb, its air heavy with incense. The survivors, 8 now, silent, their prayers ash. Alina's wounds bled, her laser gun gone, her greatcoat a shroud. The whisper faded, but its chain lingered, a taint she'd carry. The fleet's klaxon sounded, the vox warning. Inquisitorial review, taint suspected. Alina's heart sank. The Ordo Xenos would judge her knowledge of the Whisperer brand. She gripped her pendant, its edges cutting, and wondered if the Emperor's light could pierce the void, or if the Plague Father's hunger followed, a shadow no lance could burn. The blade of sanctity sailed, Nexara a distant spark, and Alina braced, her heart ice, her soul scarred, ready for judgment or war. The blade of sanctity's interrogation chamber was a cold vault, its obsidian walls carved with aquillas that judged in silence, its lumens casting a harsh glow over chains that dangled like nooses. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood bound by magcuffs, her greatcoat a tattered map of blood and ichor, her scar burning, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, arm, aching from Nexara's forge and the bioship's horrors. Talia Varen sat chained beside her, her leg a blackened mass, oozing through bandages, her medically defiance a flicker in her pain-racked eyes. Mikhail Dorn stood apart, his silence heavy, his laser gun taken, his gaze fixed on the floor, hiding a secret that gnawed at his soul. The Plague Father's whisper lingered, a faint hum. You are marked. Alina's Aquila pendant was cold, her faith shattered. The Emperor's light, a distant star in the Ordo Xenos' shadow. The bioship's node was destroyed, the fleet holding, but Nexara's scars bled, forges crippled, Skitaria dissolved, capillary towers rising anew. Lord Inquisitor Varic faced a tribunal of his peers, his robes torn, his wounds bandaged, his plasma pistol at his side. Inquisitor Lisa Mordran, a radical Ordo Xenos zealot, presided, her augmetic jaw clicking, her black eyes voids of mercy. Her servo skulls circled, their vox units hissing. Judgment for failure, taint suspected. Varic defended Alina's squad, his voice grim. They burned the Plague Father's hub, crippled a hive ship. Their knowledge of the Xenos' mind is a weapon. Mordran's jaw clicked, her voice ice. Knowledge is heresy. Voris burned for their failure. They carry the great Devourer's taint. Execute them. Alina's heart pounded, the whisper stirring. She sees you. Join us. Glasim symbols, Voris pools, Nexara's hub, Ivan's blood, Yuri's scream, Lena's plague, crushed her. Their ghosts a chain. She spoke, her voice raw. We fought, my lord, lady. We burned their heart, bled for the Emperor. Use us not a pyre. Talia growled, her pain a vow. I'm dying, Inquisitor, but I'll kill Xenos before I burn. Mikhail broke his silence, his voice trembling. I saw the hub's pulse, hid it, thought it was fear. Forgive me, but I fought. His confession stunned Alina. Mikhail's visions, unspoken, had endangered them. The whisper mocked. He betrays. You all fall. Mordran's augmetic jaw clicked, her servo skulls closing, their eyes glowing red. Confession confirms taint. The Emperor's mercy is death. Varic stepped forward, his plasma pistol humming. They are blades, Lysa, honed by fire. Nexara reports a corrupted forged temple, spores, hybrids, a cult worshipping the Xenos' echo. Send them, let them prove loyalty. Mordran's eyes narrowed, her voice a blade. One chance, Varic. They purge the temple, or I burn them myself. Alina's scar throbbed, her pendant cutting her palm, a spark of defiance against despair. The tribunal ended, the chamber's chains rattling, the whisper a chain that bound her soul. The blade of sanctity descended to Nexara, its forges a battlefield, new capillary towers rising, their veins drinking steel. Alina, Talia, and Mikhail were armed, laser guns, flak armor, melter charges, flanked by stormtroopers, their hellguns glowing. Talia hid her plague, her leg a secret that risked a bolt pistol, her defiance a fire that burned through pain. Mikhail's silence returned, his guilt a shadow, his visions a burden he bore alone. The forged temple was a Gothic ruin, its spires wreathed in spores, its altars defiled by Genestealer hybrids, pale, clawed, their eyes glowing with the plague father's echo. The whisper screamed, "Join them, become one." Alina led the squad through the temple's nave, its pews slick with slime, its icons melted by acid. Hybrids ambushed, their claws tearing stormtroopers, their lasguns firing stolen Imperial rounds. Alina's lasgun blazed, crimson bolts burning flesh, ichor steaming in the heat. Talia fired, her leg buckling, a hybrid's claw slashing her arm, her scream echoing. Mikhail's shots were precise, but a hybrid's psychic scream staggered him, revealing his vision. A temple consumed, Nexara lost. The whisper urged Alina to kneel. Visions of unity with the cult, her squad dissolved. She fought it, her pendant a cold anchor, her lasgun a prayer. The temple's sanctum held a pulsating altar, its flesh glowing, hybrids chanting a chittering hymn. A magus led them, its skull elongated, its eyes the plague father's. Alina planted a melter charge, its timer ticking, but a hybrid lunged, its claw grazing her chest, ichor burning. She fired, the magus falling, its scream a psychic wail that staggered her. Talia slashed, her knife dripping, her leg failing. Mikhail fired, his lasgun low, his visions true. The temple was a synaptic relay. The charge detonated, the altar burning, hybrids screaming as the temple collapsed. The squad escaped, stormtroopers covering, but Talia's arm oozed, her plague spreading, her secret exposed. The blade of sanctity loomed, his vox crackling. Temple purged, Nexara holds. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs, her scar searing. Talia's arm blackened, her face pale, her defiance a spark. Mikhail's silence was guilt, his visions a curse. Varic met them, his wounds slowing, his zeal unyielding. "You live," he growled, "but Mordrin watches." The whisper faded, but his taint clung, a shadow in Alina's soul. The fleet prepared for Nexara's final stand, new towers rising, the swarm evolving. Alina gripped her pendant, its edges cutting, and wondered if the Emperor's mercy was death, or if the Plague Father's unity was her fate. The chamber was a cold cage, its air heavy with incense. The survivors, 7 now, silent, their hope ash. Alina's wounds bled, her lasgun low, her greatcoat a ruin. Talia's plague spread, her arm a secret that doomed her. Mikhail's visions haunted, his silence a vow. The Vox warned. Synaptic bioform detected, Nexara's core. Alina's heart sank. The Plague Father's air lived, its hunger a tide. She braced, her heart ice, her soul scarred, ready for the Emperor's wars, or the Xenos' feast. Nexara's forged city was a molten scar, its adamantine spires crumbling under green spore clouds, its canals of liquid steel boiling as capillary towers drank the planet's core. Corporal Alina Korsakov crouched in a shattered foundry, her lasgun trembling, its power pack low from firing at tyrannid bioforms that swarmed the streets. Talia Vren knelt beside her, her leg and arm blackened by plague, her last pistol empty, her medically defiance a faint ember in her pain-racked eyes. Mikhail Dorn braced against a steel beam, his lasgun scarred, his silence strained by visions that haunted him. A forge consumed, Nexara lost. Lord Inquisitor Varic stood atop a breached wall, his robes torn, his wounds slowing, a relic blade glowing in his hands, its aquila a beacon in the forge's gloom. The Plague Father's heir, a reborn synaptic bioform, pulsed in Nexara's core, its whisper a roar, "You are us." Alina's scar seared, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, arm, chest, bleeding through her tattered greatcoat, her rebreather choking on spores that burned her lungs. The temple's purge had slowed the swarm, but the Tyranids evolved, their new bioform binding the swarm with a psychic might that dwarfed the hub. Glacium's trenches, Voris' ashes, Nexara's hub, Ivan's blood, Yuri's scream, Lena's plague, crushed Alina, their ghosts a chain that anchored her to duty. Her Aquila pendant hung cold, her prayers to the Emperor Ash, the whisper a tide that drowned her faith. Join us. End struggle. The Vox crackled. Synaptic bioforming core. Fleet prepares final stand. Varic's voice was a lash, cutting through the chittering roar. The Plague Father's air festers in the core. A synaptic tyrant, its mind the swarm's heart. We strike, burn it, or Nexara falls. His relic blade hummed, its power a hymn, but his wounds bled, his zeal a fading fire. Alina clutched a melter charge, its weight a death sentence, her scar throbbing. "My lord," she rasped. The whisper's stronger, its eyes know me. If I face it, I may break. Varic's eyes narrowed, his blade steady. "You are Valhallan, Korsakov, ice not flesh. Break, and I cut you down." Talia growled, her pain a vow. "I'm half dead, Inquisitor, but I'll burn it before I kneel." Mikhail spoke, his voice low, trembling. "I saw it, Alina, in the temple, a tyrant, its tentacles eating stars. I hid it, feared it'd break us." His visions, once a secret, were now a blade that cut Alina's trust. But she nodded, her pendant cutting her palm. "We're ice, Mikhail. We hold for the fallen." The whisper mocked. "You fracture, you fall." Alina's heart pounded, her resolve a spark in Nexara's shadow. The foundry shook, termagants swarming, their claws glinting in the molten glow. Varic led a strike team. Alina, Talia, Mikhail, 10 stormtroopers, through the forged city, its streets a slaughterhouse of ichor and steel. Capillary towers loomed, their veins throbbing, digestion pools bubbling, Skitari dissolving in acid. A Tyrannosaurus roared, its biocannon spewing acid that melted a stormtrooper, his scream silenced. Alina fired, crimson bolts burning chitin, ichor steaming. Talia limped, her last pistol gone, a stolen knife slashing a hormagant, her arm oozing. Mikhail's shots were precise, but a neurothrope's scream staggered him, his visions true. The tyrant waited. Varic's blade cleaved a carnifex, its glow a prayer, but his wounds slowed him, blood soaking his robes. The core was a cavern of flesh and steel, its walls pulsating. The synaptic tyrant a nightmare, tentacles coiling, sores weeping, eyes glowing with the Plague Father's hunger. Its psychic screams shattered minds, stormtroopers collapsing, their screams chittering hymns. Alina planted the melter charge, its timer ticking, the whisper a roar. You are home. Visions flooded her. Nexara dissolved, her squad consumed, stars devoured. She staggered, her scars searing, her pendant a cold anchor. Talia slashed, her knife dripping, her arm failing, her plague claiming her. Mikhail fired, his lasergun low, his visions a curse. The tyrant saw him. The tyrant's tentacles lashed, crushing stormtroopers, its eyes locking onto Alina, the whisper a command. Kneel. Varic's blade burned, cleaving tentacles, but a psychic blast staggered him, his relic dimming. Alina fired, her lasergun spent, swinging it like a club, crushing a termagant. Talia collapsed, her plague spreading, her voice a gasp. Burn it, Alina. For Ivan. Mikhail dragged her, his thigh bleeding, his silence broken. I'm sorry, Korsakov. The timer hit 1 minute. The tyrant's scream a psychic wail that fractured Alina's mind. Visions of unity drowning her. She fought, her pendant cutting, her resolve ice. A Navy shuttle roared, its ramp open, stormtroopers firing hell guns. Alina dragged Talia, Mikhail covering, Varic limping, his blade a beacon. The charge detonated, a white-hot flash that burned the tyrant, its scream a psychic storm that staggered Alina, her mind burning. The shuttle lifted, claws scraping its hull, Nexara's core a ruin, towers collapsing. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs, her scar searing. Talia's plague claimed her arm, her face ashen, her defiance gone. Mikhail's silence returned, his eyes haunted. Varic slumped, his wounds mortal, his zeal unbroken. The Vox crackled. Nexara holds, fleet prepares exterminatus. Alina's heart sank. Nexara was lost, its billions doomed. The shuttle's hold was a tomb, its air heavy with incense. The survivors, 5 now, silent, their hope ash. Alina's wounds bled, her lasgun gone, her greatcoat a ruin. Talia's plague spread, her breath shallow, her sacrifice a spark. Mikhail's visions haunted, his silence a vow. The whisper faded, but its taint clung, a shadow in Alina's soul. The fleet loomed, its cruisers battered, the Vox warning. Final stand, synaptic bioform reborn. Alina gripped her pendant, its edges cutting, and wondered if the Emperor's light could save Nexara, or if the Plague Father's heir would claim her soul. Nexara's central forge was a cataclysm of fire and ruin, its adamantine spires molten slag, its canals of steel choked with green spores that pulsed like a heartbeat. Corporal Alina Korsakov stood on a shattered rampart, her scavenged lasgun trembling, its power pack stolen from a Skitarii corpse, its barrel hot from firing at the Tyranid swarm that drowned the city. Mikhail Dorn stood beside her, his silence a vow, his lasgun low, his thigh wound bleeding, his visions of Nexara's fall a curse that broke his soul. Talia Vren was gone, her plague claiming her in the shuttle, her final words, "Burn it, Alina," a spark that forged Alina's resolve. Lord Inquisitor Varic, his wounds mortal, leaned on his relic blade, its aquila dim, his zeal a fading fire. Plague Father reborn, a synaptic colossus, loomed in the forge's heart, its whisper a roar, "You are us." Alina's scar seared, her wounds, shoulder, hip, thigh, arm, chest, bleeding through her tattered greatcoat, her rebreather useless against spores that burned her lungs. The synaptic tyrant's death had slowed the swarm, but the Tyranids birthed a new horror. Tentacles vast as spires, eyes like void stars, its psychic might binding a swarm that threatened the sector. Glessam's trenches, Voris's ashes, Nixara's hub, Ivan's blood, Yuri's scream, Lena's plague, Talia's sacrifice, crushed Alina, their ghosts her strength. Her Aquila pendant hung cold, her faith ash, the whisper a tide that drowned her prayers. Join us, end pain. The vox crackled, exterminatus imminent, core detonation planned. Varic's voice was a rasp, blood dripping from his lips. The Plague Father's Colossus is the swarm's mind. We detonate Nexara's core, purge it, or the sector falls. Your blood, Korsakov, buys the Emperor's mercy. His relic blade hummed, its power a prayer, but his eyes were hollow, his life fading. Alina clutched her cyclonic charge, its weight a death sentence, her scar throbbing. My lord, she whispered, the whispers in me promising unity. If I face it, I'm lost. Varic's blade rose, his voice ice. Your Valhallan, Korsakov. Ice, not flesh. Fight, or I end you. Mikhail spoke, his voice raw. I saw it, Alina. The Colossus, eating stars, you kneeling. I hid it, feared it'd break you. Forgive me. His visions, once a secret, were now a blade that cut Alina's heart. But she gripped his arm, her pendant cutting her palm. We're ice, Mikhail. We burn it, for Talia, for the fallen. The whisper roared, you are one. Alina's heart pounded, her resolve a spark in Nexara's shadow. The forge shook, termagants swarming, their claws glinting, her carnifex roaring, its biocannon spewing acid that melted steel. Varic led the remnants, Alina, Mikhail, 5 stormtroopers, through the forge. Its streets a charnel pit of ichor and bone. Capillary towers pulsed, digestion pools bubbling, Skitarii dissolved in acid. A neurothrope hovered, its screams staggering stormtroopers, their minds breaking. Alina fired, crimson bolts burning chitin, ichor steaming. Mikhail's shots were precise, but a venom-thrope spores choked him, his thigh wound slowing him. Varic's blade cleaved a hormigaunt, but his wounds bled, his steps faltering. The core loomed, a cavern of flesh and steel, the Colossus a nightmare, its tentacles coiling, eyes glowing, its psychic screams shattering souls. Alina planted the cyclonic charge, its timer ticking. The whisper a command. Kneel. Become us. Visions flooded her. Nexara dissolved, Mikhail consumed, stars devoured, her soul one with the hive mind. She staggered, her scar searing, her pendant a cold anchor. Mikhail fired, his laser spent, swinging it like a club, a termagant's claw slashing his chest, blood soaking his greatcoat. Varic's blade burned, cleaving tentacles, but the Colossus's scream staggered him, his relic falling, his body crumpling. Burn it, he gasped, blood pooling, his zeal eternal. The timer hit 1 minute, the Colossus's eyes locking onto Alina, the whisper her mirror. You are us. The swarm surged, claws tearing stormtroopers, their screams chittering hymns. Alina dragged Mikhail, his chest a ruin, his silence a prayer. A Navy shuttle roared, its ramp open, a single stormtrooper firing hellguns. Alina dove, Mikhail beside her, the charge detonating. A firestorm that burned the Colossus, its scream a psychic wail that fractured Alina's mind, her soul burning with its death. The shuttle lifted, Nexara's core imploding, towers collapsing, pools boiling dry. Alina collapsed, her breath ragged, spores coating her lungs, her scars searing. Mikhail's chest bled, his eyes fading, his silence eternal. The Vox crackled. Nexara lost, fleet retreats. The shuttle's hold was a grave, its air heavy with incense. Alina alone, her wounds bleeding, her greatcoat a shroud. The whisper faded. The fleet sailed, its cruisers scarred, the sector a wound. Alina gripped her pendant, its edges cutting, and saw the Colossus's eyes, her eyes a mirror of hunger. She had fought, burned it, but at what cost? Billions dead, Nixara ash, her squad ghosts, Ivan, Yuri, Lena, Talia, Mikhail, Varic, her strength, her curse. The Emperor's mercy was a blade, her loyalty a spark, her taint a chain. The Vox warned, bioships pursue, new hive fleet. Alina braced, her heart ice, her soul scarred, her fight eternal, the Emperor's light a distant star, her war a defiance against the hive mind's hunger.